welcome. And Coach Pete Golding, in his first year, is to say it lightly, in his first month or so, coach at Ole Miss, is already 2-0 with two big playoff wins, including a thriller the other night, 39-34 in the All-State Sugar Bowl against conference rival Georgia. Uh, Coach, in the few hours or days that you've had since the All-State Sugar Bowl win, why don't you give us a state of the union of the Rebels right now?
Yeah, obviously it was a great performance by our guys. Didn't play perfect, but found a way to not to flinch and found a way to come back and win the football game, which was our goal. We talked about going into it. It's an opportunity to go compete and play for another opportunity for the legacy of this team. And like I said over there, I don't think our guys are tired of playing yet, and just really proud that they created another opportunity for themselves to be able to play in the Fiesta Bowl versus an unbelievable team in Miami that we know we're going to play really well. So we came back that night right after the game, got back really late. Yesterday was their day off. We just finished our Monday practice, which is more of a walkthrough format, putting the previous game to bed and doing the scouting report on Miami. So excited to get to work on these guys and looking forward to the challenge.
Thank you, Coach. We'll open up for questions now. Our first question from ESPN, Heather Dinich.
Coach, I'll get the elephant out of the room real quick. What is the plan for the staff? How many assistant coaches will you have with you? And what is your communication been like with Lane on that?
Yeah, I mean, communication has been constant the entire time. So, everybody does this. Everybody's targeting us on this. There's multiple teams that have coordinators that have other jobs. They've taken head jobs everywhere else. Every year that I was at Alabama, that we went to the playoffs, right? We had coordinators and assistants that had other jobs. So all they're doing two jobs. They have a responsibility to the next institution they're going to work at. It's the portal, they're recruiting, they're doing other things. They're still doing the game plan prep, right? Will be the practices and all those type of things. So, it's the big thing for the play callers and people with significant roles from a practice standpoint to make sure those guys are at the practices. But the idea is the same guys that have coached the same positions all year will do that in this game like they have up to this point.
Okay, so just to be perfectly clear, every staff member you have who is employed by LSU will continue to coach with Ole Miss through the national championship.
They have every opportunity like they have up to this point, right, to be able to make that decision. So week in and week out, I don't dictate whether they do that or not because they're not employed by me. Up to this point, that is how it's been, and that's my expectation.
Thank you, Coach. We'll turn to Sam Hutchins from the Clarion Ledger. Sam?
Hey Pete, yeah, I guess sort of off that a portal question, but with Austin hopping in, just how are you treating players who enter the portal? And I imagine are you letting them play in the playoff even if they're in the portal?
I mean, I think every case is individual of its own. So I think we've got a lot of guys that have done the same thing the entire time. Like, hey, well, let's finish this 2025 season out the right way and finish what we started. And then, like I've said from the very beginning that I got this job, everybody, once the season is over, is going to have decisions to make. Are they at the right place? Are they in the right system? Are they getting developed, right? And all those type of things, both players and coaches. So, those individuals obviously that want to finish what they started are going to do that and have every opportunity like everybody else is going to in their 5-day window whenever our last game is to make decisions in their best interest. So for those guys that are any issues, whether they're in the portal or not, and they're creating team issues, then obviously they're not going to play in games like anybody would do and does do. So no, their intention is to be able to finish this thing out the right way. Then everybody has the opportunity, like every student athlete in the country right now, to weigh their options and do what's best for them.
Thank you, Coach. We'll go to Michael Katz from the Daily Journal.
Hey Pete, you guys obviously saw Carson Beck a couple times when he was at Georgia. Can you take anything from those previous meetings, or does the new offense and teams completely change the scouting report on a guy?
No, I mean, I think you always study the past of people to try to get tendencies and things on them. And no different than when you're playing a different offense or a different defense. You're looking over the history, what's created problems for them and what's been issues and what they've done really well and what they have not done well. So, yeah, that goes in for every quarterback. So there's some familiarity of playing with him, but he's very experienced. He's been very successful everywhere he's been. He's always had that team competing at a championship level and being in the playoffs. So we expect nothing different. A guy that has a ton of experience, is that calm, has got really good composure, has a good understanding of the system at this point. That's really well coached by Shannon. So we know we got our work cut out for us.
Brandon Marcello. Brandon, you're up for Coach.
Hey, Coach, congratulations. I was just wondering your thoughts on, if this was a 14 playoff to start off with, I think three of the teams that are playing now in the semifinals wouldn't even be in the field, and the 12-team playoff has allowed that. Can you just talk about the opportunity that the expanded playoff has provided multiple programs to show that, one, that you're worthy of being in there, but also there's a lot of teams out there that can win a national championship these days?
Yeah, my experience with it started at Division Two, and it was actually a 32 team playoff, that we made quite often and made some good runs and played in the national championship with that as well. And, the key to that at that point was getting high at the right time, and you had an opportunity for young players and transfer players to develop, early through it. And then by the end of the year, when these games are actually occurring, then evaluating where everyone is at, and that was the big thing, at that level, you couldn't lose late, you got really impacted you. So I think it's a really good concept, that, your teams that are playing really well, towards the end of the year are the hottest teams that are allowed to be able to go in there and compete for it. Because the bottom line is, week 1 and week 12, most teams are completely different than they should be. Some are better, some are worse, barring injuries or anything else. So I think for the opportunity to have more guys but to get to compete for a championship like most other sports, I think is really good for college football.
Would Pete Golding like to see 32 teams in the playoff?
I don't know about that, but I think I'm kind of on the Vegas mindset of like, all right, who's our top teams? They got a real shot at this, and let's go compete for it. But no, I mean, I think every year somebody's going to have up early and then had a really good backup behind them that was playing too good to be taken back out. So, I admire, what he's been through. I try to give him the example, like when I was at Bama, Jalen and Tua. And when Jalen got pulled at halftime, of that national championship game, and Tua goes in and had a lot of success. And the way Jalen handled that all the offseason and going into the next season, and watching Tua, start now, and Jalen could have transferred that first year and didn't. And then, Tua gets hurt in the third quarter of the SEC championship versus Georgia, and we're down. And then because of how Jalen handled it and his maturity and still prepared like he was a starter and was ready for his moment, he came in, brought us back, and we won the SEC championship. And so, I think he's kind of had that mindset the entire time. Hadn't had a bad attitude about it. He knows when he watches the tape, that Trinidad's playing at an elite level, and he's playing as the starting quarterback. And at any point, at any level of football, something can happen to that guy, and that next guy's got to be ready to roll. And we had all the confidence in the world that he would be ready to do that. And I think, that becomes emotional for anybody at any age, and so I think sometimes things happen and people want fresh starts, and let's start this thing all over and go see what happens. So I couldn't admire him more about how he's handled the situation.
Yeah, and as far as Trinidad's waiver, I mean, I'm not necessarily asking you to make the case or anything, but are you surprised that it's taken this long, to like just get any like there's still no clarity or anything?
Yeah, nothing surprises me anymore. That's the only thing I can tell you now. So, obviously it affects a lot of decisions of, who you got to go get, and it affects a lot of their decisions. Obviously, you're recruiting quarterbacks, but on it, especially with Mario being an offensive line guy by nature. I think they do a really good job on the fronts on both sides of the ball. And then there's a discipline component, that Coach Saban always lived by, that I think a lot of times they're not going to beat themselves, and, don't make undisciplined penalties and all that, and play sound football. And, you're going to have to beat them. They're not going to beat themselves. So I think you see a lot of that. And I think most people that, that went through and were fortunate enough to be around Coach Saban understand, number one is, lifeblood of the program is recruiting. And then you got to have sound schemes on both sides. You want to keep stability within those schemes for the development of players. And there's a toughness component and a competitive character component to hold these guys accountable and hold them to a high standard. And I think that's pretty consistent with whoever's playing, right now.
Gabby?
Hi, Coach. Just curious, what's impressed you the most about the response from your guys over these past couple games, given all the change internally, and then maybe some of the external noise that's been going on with the program as well?
Probably their energy and attitude on a daily basis, and I know I've mentioned this several times, but, I think at this point in the year, the season gets long and things get stale and guys get tired of playing and they're looking ahead to whatever it might be, the draft or where's my next school or I miss my family and all those things. And I just think these guys show up every day and are excited to go to work and prepare and get better and have the opportunity to go out and compete and try to win a football game. And I think that's pretty unique. And then I think the other thing for them, they don't flinch. I mean, there's a grit and toughness about this group to where regardless of the talent level, regardless what happens, whether we fumble and it's a scoop and score, whether we have a bust in the coverage, whether we mismanage, getting out of bounds when we should or not, there's not a panic. And there's a spot the ball. Let's play the next play. Let's learn from it. Let's not get too high. Let's not get too low. And let's go out here for the next 30 minutes and out physical our opponent and execute really well. And then let's look at the scoreboard at the end. Because if we do that, on a consistent basis, I think we'll like what we see. So I would say those things. And it's a group, to be honest with you, like even outside of football that you really enjoy being around. It's a really good group of guys. They got good personalities. They enjoy being around each other. It's a group that, we kind of joke and play around a lot that I think kind of breaks the monotony up as well. So I just think it's a really unique group that, some of our best players are our best leaders with the best attributes, being work ethic and energy and attitude and how they affect the people around them. So I think it's a very unique group on both sides of the ball that play for each other and enjoy playing. And it's been pretty cool to be a part of.
Bob McManaman.
I'll take the next question.
Pete, this is Bob McMahon in Phoenix. Could you take us back to Trinidad's first day of practice?
Right in his control of the offense. And then, had elite arm talent, really good decision making. I thought he did an unbelievable job throughout camp of taking care of the football. And then I think one of his best attributes is the ability to extend plays. And there's times that he's going to keep his eyes downfield like he did the other night, and he's got elite accuracy on the move. And then there's times that he sees match concepts and he's going to tuck it and become a runner. And I think he's an elite runner. But for me, it was more of his composure, probably than anything. And he's got that even keel demeanor, doesn't get too high, doesn't get too low, doesn't get rattled. But he's a natural competitor. And I don't care what you're playing. Like, he's playing to win. And that's what I've always loved about him. But, I think, talking to those guys after that week, it's just the command of the huddle and there's no nerves and being able to walk in and guys gravitate to him. And that's just naturally his personality, whether he's playing football or he's in the room talking to you guys. I mean, you're going to want to be around him. There's something about him. There's a moxie there that you want to follow.
Thank you.
Yep.
Heather. Heather Dinich.
Yeah, sorry to harp on this, but I just want to make sure I have that information accurate. What is the backup plan if they can't coach, and when will you know?
So we've got a lot of coaches here. That's the one thing about Division I football. This building is filled with guys that have been elite coaches everywhere they've been. And so, now once they've eliminated the rule to where there's not 10 coaches, right? As long as they're employed here, you can have a million coaches that can instruct on the field. So at every college across the country, right, a lot of guys that y'all don't know by name are actually the ones instructing and teaching players. And so we have an elite staff here that's been together for a long time, that knows the ins and the outs. So no different during COVID when a coach didn't show up for the game that happened that entire year that we won the national championship, right? There's multiple guys in every room all year that have been around them, know the system and all that. So, these things obviously come up every year, and guys try to do both jobs, and they have responsibilities of their new job that takes precedence, especially in times like this. And they can make both work. They make both work. If they can't, they can't. So we got plenty. That would not be any reason for success or lack of success within this game. The play callers haven't changed. There's people in every room. Our players know what to do. It's going to have no impact on the game. But y'all can keep blowing it up and make it a big deal. It'd be great.
And when will you know?
I don't know. Do you know if you're going to show up at work tomorrow? I mean, we don't know. I mean, it's grown people making decisions, so I have no idea. So we're going to go out there and spot the ball, and we got plenty enough people in this building that showed up this morning. We'll be just fine.
Sam Hutchins, you're up from Clarion.
Yeah, Pete, Xavier Harris looked like another guy that kind of got a little dinged up in the Sugar Bowl. Just what can you share about his status?
Yeah, I think when you play Georgia and when you play in the Sugar Bowl in the playoff, you're going to get banged up, especially versus teams like that. And we're going to get banged up in this game too. So, especially versus teams like that love to, run the football, and we had to be physical up front. And I thought he played one of his better games. So, this time in the year, you're going into what is week 15. You're not going to be perfect. Everything's not going to be healthy, right? So, Pat does an unbelievable job in the training room, and we'll get those guys back. And you got to take care of them a little bit from a practice standpoint to get him to the dance. But he'll be fine. He'll be his normal self.
Mitch Davis.
Coach, just to follow up on a quick question from earlier, I want to ask you about how special this group of guys is. We see, Trinidad praying with his mom. We see guys praying in the end zone. Talk about this culture. We saw it in the Egg Bowl. We've seen it all season. The adversity they face. What makes this group so special? What makes them different from other groups you've been around?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great point, what you just brought up. I mean, they're very centered. And what I mean by that, like, they're not looking for the attention, right? They know where their glory comes from and who they're trying to glorify. I think Jared Farlow, who our head of our FCA here, does an unbelievable job with these guys, with the staff, with our team throughout the week, developing a message for these guys that they follow. And, I think that goes back to recruiting, to be honest with you. I think when you go through the recruiting process, so many guys get caught up in just watching the tape and go off athletic ability and speed and all those. But you want guys that are wired the right way, but also have, a morale about them, right, that are good human beings. And sometimes I think that gets lost in today's age of sports. But I like being around good people, and we got a locker room with a lot of good dudes, and they just so happen to be tough, competitive, and good football players on top of it. And they know who to glorify, and they know who they do it for, and everybody's different on all that. And I am not saying we're pushing anything or all that, but if you were to walk into our optional chapel services, there ain't many empty seats, and I think that they know what it's about, and Jared does a great job to be able to help these guys.
We'll turn to Luke Cheney.
Hey, Coach. I was wondering if you had any early thoughts on Miami's defense and some of the challenges they might present.
We're kind of focused on the offense right now, to be honest with you. But no, we've had some carryover, and I popped them on for a little bit. I think really talented up front, very physical, at the point of attack up front. We've got speed on the perimeter, talent in the back end. So I think they know who they are. I think they've got a philosophy, and they got some coverages that complement, their base ones that they run, but very sound. But I think what stood out to me is, the energy, effort, and toughness, snap in and snap out. I think they've done a really good job. And so, we'll have our issues with that up front. We're going to have to know where some of those guys are, and going to have to take advantage of some matchups in the back end, when they present that opportunity. But probably as talented as a group that we've seen that play really physical.
All right. Well, I apologize for the technical difficulties from here in Arizona, but thank you, Coach Golding. Appreciate your time here this morning. Thank you to all the media for participating. Again, Coach Cristobal will be at 2:45 Eastern, 12:45 Mountain Time. We'll tune in then. And, Coach, we'll see you here in Arizona in a few days. It's beautiful sunshine out here.
I appreciate you guys.